speak now, or you'll give me time later on also? Amiji, I just give an opening remark and that's it. Okay, no issue. I think there's some bandwidth issue from his side. So good afternoon, everyone. Uh, only 5-6 days are left for the presentation of budget, but my sense is that the proposals have already been frozen because by now, as per the procedure, I believe that they must have finalized everything. But still, to talk about the expectation from the budget, I think it's a ever evolving exercise, and we need to always debate what is expected and then see how it is going on. So as of now, post this, we are having the COVID third wave. And I think the biggest challenge which our economy is facing today is the problem of unemployment. And the biggest sufferer seems to be the common man. With these people who were self-employed and even the rural economy of India, I think they have been affected the most. Those who were the job creators or who were providing jobs, suddenly they have become the job seekers. So first and foremost priority of this budget should be to ensure that we are able to create jobs, we are able to utilize our
Agarwal ji, these are
demographic
opening
dividend.
remarks. These are absolutely opening remarks. Employment is an issue. Charan Singh ji, what are the opening remarks from your side?
Thank you very much for getting me over. I firstly endorse the views that have been just expressed. Employment is important, but I would say 3 waves of COVID are over. The government will have to think in terms of immediately doing something and also planning immediate. Yes, employment sustainability is important. Capital utilization is important, and also identifying industries which have potential for creating employment and those industries which have suffered severely. In the long term, the government has to think, if the world has suffered severely because of monopoly of China, we have to now step in, provide a foothold to the world to come and open industries in India. So role of India in the global economy, MSMEs have suffered. So the industrial policy of India and the role of MSMEs in that, and if we have to attain a $5 trillion economy, role of the banking sector, microfinance institutions, self-help groups. So we need an immediate and a long-term budget statement in the budget about to come. That will be my opening remarks. And later, when you give me time, we'll talk at length. Thank you.
Wonderfully put across, Dr. Charan Singh ji. Now, Murli, my dear friend Murli is the MD and CEO of the South Indian Bank. Excellent experience of the banking sector. Your opening remarks, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, esteemed dignitaries. Thanks, Amit, for the opportunity. My initial remarks would be based on 2-3 important developments, which I think today we as a country have already got some leverage and which we should be leveraging going further. First one is as India has embarked on a digital transformation, and today, if you look at every single activity, economic activity has been looked at from how to make it at the convenience of the customers, how to make it fast, how to make it scalable, and how to make it in the most cost-effective way. I think Government of India had done a fantastic job of creating an excellent digital infrastructure. We have already got, should now be focusing the budget is to how do we come with the measures which will further incentivize, further motivate a lot more startups and fintechs and other technology-oriented companies to come into the country, which will make the entire economic cycle of every industry. How do we make them more and more competitive in the midst of the pandemic? Secondly, I think as a country, we have the advantage of developing all this, which can carry out number of transactions, which is far more than what Westerners can ever think of. So when we have developed technology, I think we have a huge advantage in even making this technology export, because some of the countries wouldn't have had a scale which we have had. And when we have got this right, I think it's important to leverage on this technology. This is probably what will bring India back into the glory which India traditionally used to enjoy several hundreds of years back. So I think we should, it's a great opportunity for India to sort of move ahead, surge ahead of others and create a name for itself. And last point is essentially on the COVID impact has been felt very much by the MSMEs and retail investors and individuals. Therefore, definitely there has to be a lot of thinking through should happen to again bring back these MSMEs which have actually suffered a great bit during this period. Last 2 years, their business models have gone for a toss. Their viability has gone in for a great difficulty, despite the government coming up with 3 or 4 COVID ECLGS introductions, etc. Still, the industry is yet to come out of the troubles which it's going through. Similarly, at the individual level, there are a lot of people who have lost jobs. There are people who have got cut in salaries, etc. Today, given the fact that the opportunities, job opportunities have become limited due to many of the industries going through a difficult phase, it's very important to think through how do we motivate the younger generation in order to get back to their productive life, for which we need to put in some seeds in this budget and the subsequent year's budget, so that we can leverage the demographic advantage which the country has. So this together with the digital, I'm sure we will have a deadly combination of equipping skilled people at the same time technology providing the most required multiplying factor. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a new angle to the entire budgetary synopsis that I wasn't expecting from a banker like you, Murli. But anyways, India ruled the roost as far as the GDP is concerned for 1700 years, right from the first AD. That is what the historical records say. And India was a leader in the GDP segment over the world. And it was followed by China and then probably the other countries. The USA was one of the worst in the world. And today here we are. In terms of the PPP, we are number 3. Yes, we have progressed quite a bit because of the gross and huge consumption kind of economy that we have. And that is what even Mr. Chandrasekhar, the current chairman of the Tata Sons, was hinting upon in his budgetary, kind of remarks a few days back to me. Now, let me bring in Dr. KBN Manimala. She is the managing trustee and CEO of the Sankara Health Foundation, Vizag. And she will be giving an opening remark primarily around the health issues. Your video, if it is on, it will be better, madam.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, the video, I'm not able to add it. Suddenly it got disconnected. These are all technical problems. See, I come from an NGO background, and I feel of late NGOs are seen with a pinch of doubt. But let us all understand that NGOs are also working, and particularly in healthcare, and more particularly in eye care. 65% of the work is done by NGOs. If NPCB is successful today, eye care is working so well, it is because of NGOs. At least in this budget, if healthcare can get better benefits, because COVID has shown what happens if you don't support hospitals and healthcare sector. Then what happens? When there is an emergency, there will be a problem. Suddenly, on emergency, when the emergency comes, we can't really pack up and improve. So I feel an important support should be given in training, as well as hospitals support and healthcare support, particularly in the grassroots level. That has to be improved. Otherwise, it is going to be a difficult task. Tomorrow, if there is another problem, we won't be able to match up to this. And let not the government think that, okay, only the government sector can do it, because the private sector, NGO sector has to participate, particularly because of this huge population and also the unmet needs, particularly in tribal areas and rural areas. It is the NGOs that can go and work there. Though the government PHCs and various hospitals are set up, it is always the private sector and NGO is going there and working. So I feel it is better if the government can support and take a favorable look on NGOs and the healthcare. And if they can provide a bigger budget for healthcare, it would be better. Because I come from healthcare, I can only talk about healthcare with undivided attention. I can't think of anything else other than healthcare. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. MP Narayanan, if you can hear me, Uncle Narayanan is the former CMD and probably the second oldest surviving CMD of Coal India Limited. He's also the current vice chairman of the World Mining Congress. He always has a problem with his video. Probably today will be a better day. But anyways, in case you can hear us, could you give us some opening remarks from your sector's perspective, coal and mining? Dr. MP Narayanan? Okay, we've been joined by Narendra Ji. Narendra Ji is former CMD of the Indian Overseas Bank. Narendra Ji, welcome to the show. We have already been graced by opening remarks. We've been already been graced by opening remarks from Murli Ji, Charan Singh Ji, KBN Manimala, DK Agarwal Ji, and others. Would you just like to give some opening remarks before I bring in the Honorable Chief Justice, former Chief Justice of India, on board for his, subtle remarks?
Yeah. Thank you, Amit Ji. That this year's 2022-23 budget will be on a better footing, particularly that the government had a very more than 50-60% collections of more than the budgeted in terms of the tax collection. So their fiscal deficit also are very, very moderate. And even though 6.8% projected, which they may need to push the capital expenditure which they had earlier planned, that 5.54 lakh crores, which the other ministry and state level has to push up. And with that, the next year, at least partly, if not partly, some that reduction in the fiscal deficit. Because by 2025-30, they are expecting around fiscal deficit of 4.5, which I think should be quite possible. So on that front, and also that the same tempo of direct tax collection, as well as the indirect tax collection, including the GST. GST has always have been more than 1.34 lakh crores, and on an average is higher than the 1.10 lakh crores. So that has been also a big collection, which has helped the government. So in view of that, this year also they will be focusing on capital expenditure, maybe 20-30% over and above the 5.54 lakh crores. And that will be primarily on infrastructure, roads, railways, airport, port, and other such social sectors. Also, there will be allocation, particularly the health sector will have to have enhanced allocation because of the continuous the COVID. The government has felt the necessity of putting more and more health care facilities in the particularly in the rural areas. And similarly, as far as the drinking water and also the finding out the more and more sources of groundwater and also clean water, and in terms of available of nutritious food to the people at large, particularly in the rural area. This all will be the more focus on the social sector, and education has been affected more during the COVID. So now it is primarily through online classes and all. So the education sector, as per the education policy adopted by that more focus will be on implementation of the new educational policy, and also to see that this digitalization of education will get a better boost. And those who are spending on that, I think that they should give us some concession for such education institution, so that the digitalization of the entire education sector will be a priority due to this type of uncertainties. And as for the financial sector, we are quite strong, and the banking sector, including the public sector banks, have shown that they could clean up most of the NPAs, and the provision coverage has also gone up to nearly around 78-80%, and the NPA level has come down to 6.90%. And the government, now the banks are not dependent on the government for any capital
Okay,
allocation.
Narendra ji, we'll listen to the entire statistics little later. This is just the opening remarks.
Yes.
Let me, before the final speaker, before I ask Justice Balakrishnan ji to grace us and speak a few words, would be Mr. Partha Bhattacharya. He's already there on the show. He's the former CMD of Coal India Limited, and he is somebody who is credited with the biggest IPO of his time, 15,200 crores, and somebody credited with unprecedented, unparalleled history of turning around a PSU in just 5 years' time from no Ratna to a mini Ratna to a Maharatna. Former CMD Coal India, Mr. Partha Bhattacharya. Opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Amit. I was not really prepared to speak today, but anyway, since you have asked me to do that, let me just focus quickly on the energy sector. See, in the last 75 years or so, India has done reasonably well in terms of meeting its energy requirement, although there is a substantial amount of import of oil, etc. But the mainstay in the energy scenario has been coal. And I'm somewhat fortunate to have been associated with that sector for a very long period of 34 years. And even now I have some association heading a particular committee in the Ministry of Coal and all that. Now, going forward, we have a dichotomy. One dichotomy is that coal usage globally is being restricted. And there is a sort of a call for getting into net zero kind of a situation as early as possible. But thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister, instead of agreeing for 2050 or 2060, he has put 2070 as the date for net zero emission. At the same time, in his COP26 talk discussions, he has put in 5 points, of which 4 relate to activities which are targeted by 2030. So that is actually a sort of a commitment. And what he has indicated in his speech is really unique, that India happens to be one of the few countries, or rather maybe one of the countries, which has completely been in compliance with the 2015 Paris Declaration on both counts. 40% renewable capacity, which was to be attained in 2030, is already attained today. So it has been now increased to 50%, from 40% to 50% in 2030. This is a very commendable kind of a step. We are the 4th largest country in terms of generating capacity for renewables. So a lot of strides has happened in the renewable, in the energy sector. Renewable capacity addition has taken place. But incidentally, India is having a unique problem. One problem that we have is the per capita consumption of energy in this country is one of the lowest in the world, particularly in the developing or developed world. We are at 1,200 units per capita, which is 1/3 of China and 1/3 of the world average. And unless this increases, we can't really think of an equitable kind of development and growth. So I guess that from if 1,200, we need to really move up to at least 2,000, which will still be much less than what is China today. But and that should happen by 2030. So this 2,000 minus 1,200, 800 units of additional capacity on 1.3 billion units is 1,100 billion units of extra power that requires to be produced, which cannot happen from renewable at all. We have a target of increasing renewable from the present 100 gigawatt to 500 gigawatt. This is a very tall order. Even if we achieve this, it will not be possible to meet, improve the per capita consumption to a decent level. And so therefore, the projections of the CEA, we find that while renewable increases by 400%, from 100 to 500, even coal increases from the current level of about 1 billion tons of coal consumption to somewhere around 1,300 million tons. At least 30% increment in coal will continue to happen. We have to be able to sell this to the world across, that we are a country which is dependent on coal and we have to continue to depend on coal for some more time. At the same time, we have our renewable trajectory going up. So I think it's a question of balancing the objectives of moving towards minimizing emissions and all that, and at the same time meeting the energy demand of this developing country, meeting the energy requirement of every Indian, is somewhat a situation of dichotomy. But I'm sure that under the great leadership that we find today, a visionary leadership, we should be able to move towards that in a very calibrated and well-calculated manner. I think with that, let me conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Bhattacharya, former CMD Coal India, one of the unparalleled histories that he carries with himself, one of the unparalleled incidents of turning around a PSU from a mini Ratna to a Maharatna in 5 years' time. We had a separate monologue covered with him a few days back. From the energy front, we have Dr. Akhilesh Kumar Jain, my very old friend, almost 12 years now, we know each other. He's former CMD of Rajasthan Electronics Institution Limited, solar energy champion. Your opening remarks, just 2 minutes. Then I have Balakrishna ji waiting, Justice KG Balakrishna ji to speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Goenka ji, and all our esteemed panelists here. See, I have just listened to the remarks of Mr. Partha Bhattacharya. What I believe in this country is that we have to move forward with the one nation and one tariff across the country. If we have ultimately to grow with the energy per capita consumption, whatever you were talking, I do agree that per capita consumption should increase to, if not the world average, at least to 25% every 5 years. So this can only increase once we strengthen our MSME sector, and in MSME sector growth, the energy component is very costly. They can't compete even in the local market. So on the one side, we see that we are able to produce solar electricity at a cost of 2 rupees a unit, whereas conventional electricity somehow still is costly and increasing day by day. So I'm of the opinion that there's no doubt that we have to completely depend on solar, rather solar with storage. And of course, parallelly, we have to continue with the thermal sector. So for the budget expectation and for the growth of the industry and for the growth of the energy sector, my just one submission that if we are able to conclude the one nation, one power tariff and some kind of commitment of say ₹5 per unit to the entire industry sector, because we have 6 crore MSME in the country, and they are catching up very fast to becoming the mega units, and they are increasing their capacity as well. So that's one point I would like to suggest. Another point, because I also deal with the electric vehicle industry. So there, the biggest bottleneck which I see is that bank is not financing electric vehicles. So FAME undoubtedly has done tremendous work. We are supporting industry, we are supporting even the buyers. But unless the bank does not agree to finance the electric vehicles, this sector would also not grow. So these two submissions I thought are relevant and will probably make us all happy when the budget is there.
Dr. Jain, thank you so much for your opening remarks. Electric vehicles definitely is the way to go forward. And it is something which the government is really focusing upon from a sustainability perspective as well. Now let me happily bring in former Chief Justice of India, the Revered Justice KG Balakrishnan ji, one of the patrons of the forum, which is taking this baton to, sensitize the Indians towards the glorious 75 years that we have spent as a free country. And now Justice KG Balakrishnan, remarks from you regarding what the country should look forward to in this very tough period of time that we've all gone through, and also the petition that was filed last year. In case you would like to speak a little bit about it from my side, about spending some good amount of budget, at least probably 1% or so as per the petition, on the judicial infrastructural reforms, so that the judicial system in this country can really puck up, which is something which is really kind of clamping down on the growth and progress of this country. Because whatever we do, if it's a lawless country, if it's a judicially paralyzed country, we certainly will lose out on all other fronts. Over to you, former Chief Justice of India, chief guest for the show, Justice KG Balakrishnan ji.
Mr. Amit Garga, I'm in the midst of distinguished panelists. I was keenly attending their presentation, a small presentation. the country, what are the major problems which are being faced by this country, especially in the midst of this COVID period. We are really, all the countries all over the world are facing problem, and we have also got that share of it. But we have to survive. I don't think India is in a very bad situation. Our poverty alleviation mission is successful. Employment generation will take place. As soon as the pandemic period is over, there will be a lot of employment opportunities. The young generation is active, skilled, and vibrant. They can do wonders. And only thing that these leaders, like the persons who have participate in this function, they have to give the leadership. Then they would be able to do what is required. I am sure that country is in the right track, and we can move forward, and we will have a bright future. No doubt, absolutely no doubt about that. India would be in the forefront of the world economy. We have the good weather, good the situation. Our energy level also, energy position also is better. Our food production is good. We don't have any shortage of food. We are in fact exporting food materials to other countries. So in that way, we only think that there should be an equitable distribution of the food materials all over the world. These are all. I don't want to say anything on regarding this thing. I don't want to carry coal to Newcastle, because all others are very, very distinguished personalities on this subject. As Mr. Goenka has mentioned about the infrastructure to be provided for judiciary, you see, just as in Delhi, nearly 200 cases, sessions cases are to be tried every year. Sessions cases, that is the murder trial, take place. And since last 2 years, the proper trial is taking place. All these cases are in arrears. I feel at least 5 sessions judges should be appointed in each district in India. In each district court, not district court centers. In one district, there are 2 or 3 district court centers. In all these, additionally, 5 district court should be started, and then only, and wherever necessary, the magistrate court also should be started. And if these courts are started, and if there are lack of manpower, the young or fairly senior lawyers should be appointed as the judges on part-time basis, and their service should be taken, for which infrastructure should be provided. That is also absolutely essential. Otherwise, our judicial system will fail. If the judicial system fails, our law and order situation will fail. If our law and order situation fails, there will not be any effective protection to your property, your wealth, your prestige, the person. Only when there is an efficient judicial system, then the people, there will be the citizens, the protection will be given to the citizens to protect their property and their persons. That is the law and order situation that is required. Law and order situation should be there only if there is a proper judiciary, especially the criminal judicial system is working effectively. And we have to wipe out all the areas of cases at least within 2 years. And the district court, I appeal to the state government, each state government should start new courts, at least 5 courts in each district court centers to start with. Otherwise, this system will crumble down because of the heaviness of the arrears of cases. That is very, very urgent. I don't have much idea about the public interest situation that is filed for the infrastructure of the court. So the High Court, all the High Court should try for this, and in connection, the state judiciary can function within the control of the High Court with cooperation of the state government. So the state government should extend the help, and the High Court should start new courts in consultation with the state government. And that is only what I can say at this juncture. Is a very, very important matter to be discussed in detail. And so far the discussion has not started because the pandemic period is not over. So that is very important. And even I request Amit can even start a discussion on this very subject and call some of the distinguished persons associated with these in the legal field, because this is very important.
Why, Ramanna ji, Honorable Chief Justice Ramanna, sir, sorry to interrupt, but Honorable Chief Justice Ramanna has rejected the petition that was filed last year. Would you like to say something on that?
No, that doesn't matter. That is a judicial matter. There is no question of giving direction to judicial matter. It is a state must come forward to start the new courts. So why should the court give directions? So only in that respect that is to be taken. Not that it is not required, but it is not for the court to give directions. State should come forward and start new courts. So that is very important. And the respective chief justice of the various high courts should immediately initiate the process for starting new courts. Otherwise, all the cases will start, huge arrears will be there. And there will be all these murderers, smugglers, all thieves will have a very, 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 very festive occasion for them. So don't allow that situation.
Yeah, exactly. That is what there is also a lot of concern from the judiciary stepping in, and the judiciary should step in from the agriculture perspective, which is driving this country over the last so many years. And today we are the leaders in the food production, as you rightly pointed out. So any advice for the policymakers from the budget perspective for the agricultural economy?
Agriculture, it is based on everything depends on agriculture. If you have good production, our country's future will be good. If there is a bad agricultural production, it depends on the availability of the fertilizer, availability of the workers. All these are so many good weather. There should be sufficient rain, and we have got large areas of unirrigated lands. We have to irrigate those areas. As you see the Rajasthan Canal, how it was there prior to the Rajasthan Canal, how it looks like now. So the areas should be for the irrigated areas. The Madhya Pradesh, they huge land, huge extent of land is unirrigated. We should extend. We should construct these small canals from the various the rivers, and that will help us to prevent the flooding, which is even now it is you see even Dehradun there was flood, even this Uttarakhand there was flood. We should of course that is terrain is difficult but terrain is good. Madhya Pradesh is a state where they can construct small canals from the rivers, so that the agriculture field, the irrigated place could be increased. So I don't want to change the course of your discussion.
No, that's fine. We are all very happy. I'm sure the guest here would also be very happy to listen, because not every day do we get a chance to hear the former Chief Justice of India coming on shows and speaking, especially on the online mode, when nothing can be really trusted. Anyways, our next issue that I would like to flag off is something to do with, especially with the regulation of the, IT things, that is happening in this country. That is one issue that I'd like to because you spoke on the subject a few days back, regulation of IT things, which are being all pumped into the country from the outside. Do we need special budgetary allocations in this country so that there is more stringent IT regulation in this country? Secondly, NGOs, they are suffering quite a bit, especially after the stringent regulations which have been promulgated over the last 3, 4 years, 5 years under the current dispensation. The NGOs are also going through a lot of tough time now. There is a lot of talk about Startup India, but there is nothing talking about startup NGOs, fund allocations, budgets, and what are your views on the NGO system of this country?
NGOs, many NGOs were closely associated with the our NHRC, National Human Rights Commission. We are working closely, but some of the NGOs are they are not very honest. That created problem. Whenever say group of hard-working, honest people are working, if there are some people who is not using the foreign fund for the unethical practices, then it creates problem. Then the state is bound to create some sort of embargo on their receipt of such money. So that is what has really happened. It is to be sorted out. I feel there should be some efficient officers should be appointed by the government. Then they should scrutinize the activities, and subject to scrutinize these activities, the NGO should be given a free hand. There are so many NGOs working very hard. It is only because of their effort. Really, the state, the welfare activities reach the common man.
Any specific, you've been through this entire process of formulation of laws, legislations, budgets, judicial systems over the last 50 years or more. Any specific instances you have in mind from the financial perspective, which the judicially handled to probably put the country on the right track? Because a lot of times the judiciary has to step in.
Judiciary usually is said that doesn't have the pulse. That is what is usually said. But sufficient allocations are made. Especially some of the states, it is they are fairly, they give all. In some state, of course, we make a request, then they have to. I don't want to. I have association. I was a Kerala High Court, Gujarat High Court, and Tamil Nadu High Court, and also in the Supreme Court. All these institutions, in the Supreme Court also, there was no difficulty in getting fund. Or Delhi government is very charitable in giving all help to the judiciary right from the beginning. So they are all helping. The new court buildings, everything is. Gujarat government also, I must say that they are very. Tamil Nadu also is fairly good. So whenever any help is required for specific, not general requirement, specific requirement is made, of course the government will come forward and they doesn't reject the proposal made by the High Court. There are good court buildings also in
despite of the time shortage, but you're leading me to so many new things. The moment you're speaking, something new is coming to my mind. You're talking about funds issues, and like talking about the budgets, unity of the country's unity over the last few years, especially on various grounds of secularism, various grounds of ethnicity, pluralism, language issues. All these things have created a lot of problems in this country, NRC, so many things. Now, the budget allocation for things like basic things like Rajbhasha, or as they say, the official language, not the Rashtra Bhasha, official language. India doesn't have any national language. Now, as far as my knowledge goes. Now, do you think there has to be more thoughts to be put across in terms of allocating more budgets to create unity in the country using mediums of, like all these guys are pointing out, Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat, unity of the country, etc. As a judicial head, legal of the country, would you suggest the government of the day, the finance ministry, to allocate more such resources towards unification, creating more synergy, to creating more fraternity in the country? Because that is what I feel people don't touch upon. People will talk about PLI schemes, but will not touch upon the basic, the threads that are binding the country together.
There need not be any specific activity as such. People, one should feel that we are in a proud country we live in this country, we help for the welfare of this country. Everyone should feel that, and their activities should be, and we shall not tolerate the people acting or speaking against the unity, unified. We have inserted the fundamental duties in the Constitution, the fundamental 51 the Constitution. It is the basic thing is the unity of the country. That is the primary duty of the citizens. So we should, in all efforts, whenever the state government or the judiciary or the union government, it should act only according to that. So no special program is required as such. Okay, thank you, Mr. Amit Goenka.
Sir, if you can just stay on for 5-10 minutes more, because I
will listen.
Because there are many other guests joining us. They will keep talking to you as they wish, and if you can spend a few more minutes, I pray to you, sir. We've been joined by Mr. Birendranath Tiwari, a man who is just an 82-year-old young man, and he is, though he appears to be 42, and he today morning only told me that is my blessings that keeps him going young. And I told him, I am 41, you are 82, and you look like 41, I look like 82. That's the only difference. Now he is the president of the Film Federation of Workers of Indian Film Association. They have 5 lakh workers that drive the film industry of this country. He's not a small man. He's a very, very important man today in this country, because films drive the emotions, the way the thinking happens in this country. Tiwari ji, I'm sorry, first of all, he's just 70. He's not 82. Now let me bring him on board. Tiwari ji, what are your views on this very important industry? What would you like to say? And also, I would like to say something to the Honorable Chief Justice of India and all other dignitaries.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. ऐसा है सर कि फिल्म इंडस्ट्री अभी बजट जो है बढ़ती जा रही है, फिल्में महंगी होती जा रही हैं, क्योंकि स्टारों का कास्ट जो है केवल बढ़ा है, तो स्टार लोगों ने अपनी कीमत बढ़ाई है, वर्कर तो वैसे ही हालत में है। और आज सिनेमा लोग डिफरेंट माध्यम से देख रहे हैं। तकरीबन 2.5 लाख करोड़ का टर्नओवर है फिल्म इंडस्ट्री का, एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री का, जो सरकार को देते रहते हैं हम लोग, टैक्सेस जाता है, सब कुछ होता है। लॉकडाउन में एक ही साधन था कि आपको एंटरटेनमेंट करने का कोई दूसरा साधन नहीं था सिनेमा के अलावा। वो इंडस्ट्री आज मुश्किल घड़ी से गुजर रही है। सरकार को इसमें इन्वॉल्व होना चाहिए, उसमें उसको डेवलप करना चाहिए। डिफरेंट इक्विपमेंट जो फॉरेन से भी आ रहे हैं उसके लिए प्रमोट करना चाहिए। सिनेमा को सिनेमा के लोग ही प्रमोट कर रहे हैं, वही सब आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। सरकार का योगदान कहीं से कुछ है नहीं। तो आज फिल्मों का बजट बढ़ता जा रहा है। टेक्नीशियन जो है, वर्कर जो है, 20-20 घंटे काम करते हैं, उनके लिए कोई सुविधा नहीं है। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट जो है, लेबर कानून के अंतर्गत लेबर लॉ बनता है, मगर वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन उसका हो नहीं पाता है। तो मुश्किलें बहुत है। सरकार को जागरूक होना पड़ेगा। वर्कर जो अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड सेक्टर है, जिनका कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऐसा नहीं है, जिसको प्राइवेटली है, हम सारे लोग जो कर रहे हैं, उसको सरकार चाहती तो है, मगर हर स्टेट के अपने अपने कानून हैं जो कि लागू नहीं हो पाता हम लोगों के ऊपर, या लोग विलिंग नहीं करते हैं कि हमारी सपोर्ट। बजट फिल्मों की हम लोग तो बढ़ता जा रहा है, सिनेमा इंडस्ट्री बहुत आगे तरक्की कर रही है। हम लोगों के बारे में भी सरकार को एक लाइमलाइट में लाना पड़ेगा। लेबर लॉ को लागू करना पड़ेगा। लेबर कोड जो बन रहे हैं उसको जब तक लागू नहीं होगा तब तक सिस्टम आगे बढ़ेगा नहीं। आज एक स्टार की कीमत 200 करोड़ तक पहुंच गई है, मगर टेक्नीशियन आज भी अपने ईमानदारी के पैसे पाने के लिए मुश्किलों के साथ लड़ रहा है।
सब्सिडीज, Tiwari ji, salary subsidies, because that is what the labor ministry, I was talking to the erstwhile labor minister, Santosh Gangwar ji, not to the current one, Bhupendra Yadav. So he was talking about salary subsidies. That is something which you can push from your federation, which is the largest federation of the country for film industry, 5 lakh workers.
जी, आपका सपोर्ट चाहिए क्योंकि भूपेंद्र जी को भी हमने लेटर लिखा था, गंगवार जी तो हमारे साथ थे, बहुत कुछ उन्होंने हमारे लिए कुछ किया था, लेबर कोड के अंदर आने वाला था, मगर किरीट सोमैया जी जब लेबर चेयरमैन थे ऑल इंडिया के, तो उन्होंने काफी कुछ किया था मदद, मगर वो अभी तक पेपर पर सिग्नेचर नहीं हो पाया है 3 साल से। सब कुछ लोकसभा में पास होने के बाद भी बिल जो है वो पेपर पर नहीं आया, जिसकी वजह से हम आज भी वैसे ही हैं, अधूरे से पड़े हुए हैं। मैं सरकार के इतने बड़े बड़े लोग, जजेस और तमाम लोग और आपके माध्यम से मैं चाहूंगा कि सरकार तक पहुंचे, लेबर मिनिस्टर तक बात हमारी पहुंचे, और वर्कर के बारे में जो लेबर कोड बन रहा है वो उसका बेनिफिट सबको मिले, वो हो नहीं पा रहा है सर। क्यों नहीं हो रहा है मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आ रहा है कि सेंट्रल का प्रॉब्लम है कि स्टेट का प्रॉब्लम है, मगर उसका बेनिफिट हम लोगों को नहीं मिल रहा है।
Tiwari ji, the recording of this particular show will be sent to you. My only one desire that from you will be that till date I haven't watched a movie centered around the kind of complexities or the kind of politics which can go around from the industry political nexus for making or framing of a budget of the country of India's size. So that's probably a beautiful storyline that I've already hinted upon. You can, after this particular show, we can discuss that separately. Stay on the show, sir. Let me quickly bring in now Manimala. Manimala ji, it's a breath of fresh air to see a woman. Today, I must admit that I haven't found you look so wonderfully beautiful as I find you today. Probably it is because you're the only woman on the show. And she is the managing trustee and CEO of the Sankara Foundation. Madam, you've done an excellent job. I remember John Majors, the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, was there in your campus and he stayed with your campus for a few days and they lauded. So if we have such wonderful things and work happening from the healthcare sector, probably 3 to 5 minutes from your side about what you've done and what are the expectations for your sector to the Finance Minister.
Unmute karna, madam. Unmute.
You are on mute.
Actually, when I received a call from British High Commission that Sir John Major wants to visit your organization. Is it okay? See, in our country, even a corporator will not come uninvited. I asked, who is this John Major? They said, don't you know he is former Prime Minister of UK? And the whole thing, they have done a third-party audit on how Standard Chartered Bank has started a program called Seeing is Believing. So under that, they have taken 2,000 NGO hospitals that are working in eye care, and they have done a third-party audit and they have identified our hospital. And they said, okay, Standard Chartered Bank is completely funding that and he wants to come and visit your hospital. I said, okay, come. Then later on, British High Commission said, you have to put a Mercedes-Benz for him. And I stay in Visakhapatnam and Mercedes-Benz is not available on rent in Visakhapatnam. I have to bring it from either Hyderabad or Chennai and it would cost me ₹1,00,000 rupees. Then I thought in those days for 1,000 rupees, we would be able to do one cataract surgery. Then I said, see, 1,00,000 plus 1,00,000 for Mervyn Davis and Sir John Major, ₹2,00,000 rupees. If I have to spend on just their Mercedes-Benz, I do not want to do that. I have an Innova and I will take a Skoda on rent and I can provide that, but not this. Then they said, no, he will not travel in that. Then I said, okay, it is your problem, not my problem. I have not invited you. They said, you are, what should I say? Your head weight is more. I said, no, sir, it is poverty. I don't have that kind of a money to spend on people like John Major or Mervyn Davis. I have money. I'm pulling up money to spend on poor tribal people. They said, write the same thing in an email and send it to us. Then I have written that because that's what I felt. Then they said the meeting is cancelled. Fortunately, Sir John Major happened to see that mail and his room was booked in a 5-star hotel here. He said, cancel that also. I will stay in the hospital room only. Let them not spend the 12,000 rupees also. And he came in the morning and stayed with us till evening, and almost 20 people stayed with us. That is that is how we were working. Sir, till now we have done about more than 3,72,000 surgeries. Out of them, 78% of the surgeries are done totally free of cost to the patient. But the problem is, see, there may be, as Justice Balakrishnan ji rightly said, yes, in every sector there is a black sheep. There are 1 or 2 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 12, how many soever. It does not mean that just because there is a small cancer, you will kill the person. If there is a cancer, cut that wing. But what is happening of late is NGOs are seen with always a doubt. And because of that, we are suffering. Now, the government is saying that 12A should be renewed every 3 years. And 80G should be renewed every 3 years. See, this was there, which they have given permanently. And today they say FCRA, you have to renew every 5 years. And they don't even give a reason. They simply refuse your FCRA for the renewal. And to get the reason for a small NGO from here going to government, it is very difficult. We won't even know what is the reason. So if you have a problem, if the government has a problem, okay, let them really identify where the problem is and work on that. Not see, apple and orange, you can't weigh in the same basket. No, that is the problem. Another thing is, see, as far as NGO eye care is concerned, 67% of the work is done by NGOs. But majority of the fund goes to government hospitals. And 80% of the training for eye care services is done by NGOs. Say, for example, if a doctor passed MBBS, if he comes to Shankar Foundation, while his DNB is that master's course recognized by government, and while his 3 years of DNB, he will do minimum 800 to 1,000 surgeries. Whereas if he goes to a government hospital, I'm not talking about AIIMS, I'm not talking about very big hospitals. There are other government hospitals also. If they go there, they will do about 5 to 10 surgeries and not more than that. They don't do any advanced surgeries. Whereas in government, they pay to these people. Whereas for us, they say you have to pay this, that, DA, TA, everything, and the salaries should be increased. All this they say. On one hand, we have to train them, and on the other hand, we have to bear the expenditure also. Just because of the commitment to improve eye care, just because of the ambition to improve eye care in India, we are working. Of course, the solace is the corporate social responsibility, where the corporates are really supporting. See, when we approach corporates, they are really seeing which NGO is working, which NGO is not working. They are really assessing well, and they are supporting. Only based on their support we are going. Say, for example, a small example I can give you. When government was supporting 100 rupees spectacle for a child, I was insisting, a child, if we give that 100 rupees spectacle, the child will not wear. See, we have done a screening in one of the schools, and 113 children we have provided spectacles. And this 100 rupees spectacle we have provided. And after 15 days, when I went back and tried to assess how many children are wearing for the sake of compliance, only 13 children were wearing.
Manimalaji, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
You just go around with your recommendations and close, because we have so many speakers. They were waiting to
Yes,
speak.
sir. Yes, yes.
Specific instances, we cannot really give time today.
Okay, sir. Sir, particularly for eye care, the budget is reduced vis-a-vis because of this COVID or anything. Because of this COVID, what happened, sir? Because of the screen time, more screen time, eyes are getting affected. So I feel for in this budget, eye care should be given a budget, because post-COVID, when we are doing cataract surgeries, they are like shells, very matured cataracts we are doing. And apart from that, probably government should support us in doing this for Skill India improvement, like DNBs, the optometrists, the vision technicians. These cadre, unless this is improved, whatever amount of money government spends on these Kanti Velugu or any other programs, just by giving spectacles free of cost, it will not work, because you will not be able to identify the right spectacle. That is a problem. And another thing is, majority of these public sector buildings, they are not accessible to disabled people, sir. That accessibility has to be improved. How they will do that in at least in the next 3, 4, 5 budgets, they have to allocate a bit by bit and improve. Otherwise, it is going to be a problem. How a disabled person or a differently abled person, whether he is in any kind of disability, how will he go and approach a government organization? Many of our government organizations, they are not accessible to disabled people. So with these 4 or 5 recommendations, I feel particularly because I come from eye care, I request the government, at least in this budget, because last budget they have reduced for eye care because of this corona virus. But at least in this budget, they should accept that because of this corona only, the eyes are also getting affected, and that should be improved.
Thank you, Manimala ji. We've been joined by, on a very, very relevant contextual note, we've been joined by Dr. Alexander Thomas, a very dear and old friend of mine. He is the president of the Association of Healthcare Providers of India. Dr. Thomas, very welcome to the show. He has 8,500 hospitals under his ambit, driving the healthcare sector in this country. We had Ms. Manimala, Managing Secretary and CEO of Sankara Foundation, speaking just before you. But before I bring you on board, let me quickly bring in now, let me introduce you, Justice K.G. Balakrishnan. Dr. Thomas is a very, very strong patron to the forum for the last 1 year. Dr. Thomas, I think your mic and video both are off. Anyways, Murli, Mr. Murli Ramakrishnan, the MD and CEO, will start the process of recommendations now. Mr. Murli Ramakrishnan, the MD and CEO of South Indian Bank, one of the regional bank with a national presence now, growing and its footprints into the country very strongly. They have a lot of strong presence in the MSME sector. They work very strongly with IT as a kind of a backbone, and the bank has really started growing pretty well despite the challenging times in the last 2 years. Mr. Murli Ramakrishnan, your recommendations for the dispensation for the bank and the economy.
Thank you, Amit, and it was indeed very nice to hear a lot of good recommendations from very eminent speakers who are taking part in this discussion. By way of recommendation from the financial sector, of course, there are quite a few which we had sort of pointed out, but then probably I will restrict myself to a few which are very relevant for the sector which got most impacted by the COVID. Because what we need to experience, what we're experiencing the last couple of years, particularly for the SME sector, is that more than 80-90% of the SMEs are incurring losses, and many of their business models have completely gone for a toss, and they are still struggling to revive back to normalcy. Government had done a fabulous job. Reserve Bank of India has done a fabulous job in coming out with ECLGS schemes, and wherein all the banks were made to give assistance, extra assistance to SMEs, etc., so that by giving them moratorium, so that they are not burdened with any interest during that period when the revival is happening. But then it appears to be that COVID is still creating continuous impact. And last quarter, which ended in December, was I would say probably one of the first few quarters where all 3 months were reasonably okay. But then again, we have started now seeing third wave hitting us very badly. So taking that into account, I think there are a few suggestions for a particularly SME related event. So let me just talk about them. First one is the measures for timely disbursal of interest subvention for SMEs and exports. So this is one thing which I think very important, because MSMEs, as you know, to look at one of the primary causes of why MSME becomes NPA is they have a receivable problem. They have a debtor problem. They struggle a lot and they manufacture the product and then they sell it. And then before they realize their sale proceeds, the working capital cycle goes for a toss. And it's a continuous negative spiral. Because the working capital cycle gets extended, they need to borrow more. Because they need to borrow more, they need to service more. Because they are not getting their receivables, they get stuck with the cases slipping, servicing slipping into SMA 1, 2, etc., which are the new norms of the Reserve Bank of India to really mark the delinquencies from SME sector. Once it becomes NPA substandard, then the whole thing is visible to the entire banking system. Today, everything is visible to the entire banking system. So the moment they start defaulting, all the other banks and other financial institutions also take a backseat because they don't want to fund the person who is already struggling. Even if somebody were to really look at them with a different set of eyes, when regulators come and have an inspection, they need to answer a lot of questions as to why you went ahead and funded a case, despite that case was showing a lot of stress. Because finally, at the end of the day, we are dealing with public money. Therefore, timely receivables management for SMEs is a very, very critical one. I think, again, particularly with exports being a very predominant money earner for the country, definitely realization for them should happen at a faster rate. This is even more pronounced when the principal is a government entity. Say, since the government has the maximum responsibility of ensuring that the ecosystem is functioning well, wherever they are the principal, I think they should ensure that the smaller players who are supplying to them are paid as per the terms of reference. So that's the only way to improve the liquidity, and the lack of liquidity is one of the biggest causes for SMEs becoming NPAs. Second one I would say is even amongst the SMEs, if you were to look at, there are many which are in rural, particularly in rural branches, rural part of the country, where a lot of SMEs are present. So we need to really provide, since the whole country is moving towards digitally enabling it, I think there should be a special incentive provided for rural tech infrastructure with involvement of banks. I think this is something which is very critical because otherwise they'll be completely left out, cut out from the country and cut off from the rest of the development which is happening. And as you know, country's growth at the end of the day has to be completely percolating down to the rural areas too. Therefore, there has to be a special attention paid to rural tech infrastructure. Third one is we need to, even amongst the SMEs, if you were to look at the lowest end of the SMEs, which are very tiny micro units, they are the ones which are maximum hit, where probably their turnover could be less than 1 crore today. They are the ones who are going to be again suffering a lot due to the pandemic. Therefore, regulators should think of giving additional priority sector weightages given to such sectors so that banks are motivated into incentivized to go and identify such entities and fund them. Next one is employment generation, which we all spoke about during our earlier conversation. I think that's extremely important. Therefore, we need to definitely look at employment generation in capex schemes in lieu of direct benefit schemes, transfer schemes with involvement of banks and FIs. So one way is to give direct benefit to them. The other way is to create employment so that they are given the tools for them to survive on their own. And similarly, I think when it comes to individuals, again, who are massively hit due to the COVID, etc., particularly the older generation who have got a lot of comorbid issues, etc., who are the most vulnerable. I think we need to come out with a medical insurance scheme for people who are above 70 years and with at least 50% of the premium which is payable by them given for TDS, so that with a deduction in TDS. So that way you can incentivize more and more older people who may not have the means to really take care of their medical expenses when they are hit with a pandemic like this, so that they are able to protect themselves. And today, they are the most vulnerable people who are impacted by this pandemic. Other one is today in pandemic, if you look at it, a lot of people are stuck with not having sufficient place to stay, particularly when there is a restriction on movement, etc. When people say work from home, neither do they have work nor do they have home. So I think one should really look at how to really make home available for such people. So I think we need to really look at affordable housing in a very big way, and we need to look at how do we increase the deduction probably given for home loan. Today we are talking about 1.5 lakhs. I think we should certainly increase it to 4 lakhs. Because today, even a small house, even in a second or a third run cities cost you not less than 15, 20 lakhs, and you just can't get any decent house to live in without spending that much of money to purchase a house. And places like Bombay, you don't have to talk about it. Even if you pay 1 crore, you don't get a house in even New Bombay, which is quite far off from the place of work. So I think there has to be a serious attention paid to affordable housing. A lot of developments have happened over the last few years, but I think still the pandemic has clearly opened up to say that there are people who are on streets, they have nowhere to go, and when the restriction in movement, etc., they are actually perishing. And one last suggestion I would say is, in continuation of what I made as an initial comment, we need to necessarily have a regulator for fintechs, because fintechs are indeed going to be extremely critical for the development of the country, particularly when the country is moving towards digital economy. But we can't let fintechs have their own field day. We need to have regulations around them so that they behave properly, they conduct their affairs in a meaningful way, so that they are contributory. See, as much as in any other field, you will find some black sheep who might be actually very vulnerable, who might be short-term oriented, who might be lured by greed, etc. So unless you have a proper regulation controlling them, you might feel that somehow this may completely go out of control, which might be very detrimental to the society. Therefore, it's very important to bring a regulation for fintechs, but that would be probably my last suggestion. So I just touched upon very few in SME, in individual, and in the most important aspect of digitizing the country, which is in the area of fintech. Thank you.
Murli, from the fintech perspective, the MD and CEO of South Indian Bank speaking. We've been joined by probably the strongest, one of the strongest pillars, along with General VK Singh, Brigadier Ajit Apte, celebrated soldier of the Bangladesh Liberation War. Brigadier Saab, Uncle Apte, namaskar. He has been through the thick and thin of this entire expedition over the last 1 year. Is at the age of 72, standing in rain, winter, whatever it is, he's been supporting us. And Brigadier Apte is one of the top 17 soldiers who are invited by the Bangladesh government. Even last year on 16th of December, the day when the Pakistani army laid its weapon, that day also Mr. Brigadier Apte was, the signature of the entire nation and the neighbor. Brigadier Apte, we've been joined by Justice Balakrishnan ji, again, former Chief Justice of India. He was there with us. He was there with us for a long time. We'll be joined by Shyam Jaju, also the Vice President of the Bharatiya Janata Party. And let me quickly bring in, Justice Balakrishnan ji. Welcome back to the show. We have Mr. Raman Sarma, also the Secretary General of the General Insurance Council. We have Mr. Dr. Alexander Thomas, who is the President of the Association of Healthcare Providers of India. Now, let me quickly bring in, Mr. Charan Singh. He's a banker himself. He's also a banker. Charan Singh ji, would you like to throw some points on the budgetary expectations for 2022, sir?
Yes, sure. As I mentioned a few minutes back,
Thomas CMD Punjab and Sindh Bank, Charan Singh ji.
Sure. As I just mentioned a few minutes back, the government is on a cusp of a very important time ahead. On one hand, we have immediate problems which have been mentioned by many of the speakers before me. On the other hand, we are now at a position where in the long run, we can try to get our position back. As you mentioned in the introduction, for nearly 2000 years, we were the richest country on the planet. Now a reset button has been done because of COVID. This happens almost every 100 years. And this is a great opportunity which we need to take. Now, to avail this great opportunity that we have with us, the government will have to plan long-term basis as to how come within 20-25 years, China was able to gather more than 9 lakh foreign companies to operate in China. So we have to become the pivot of growth, and we have to regain the old glory that India was. We probably will have to do many things so that we are able to attract these foreign companies to operate from India. Now we have one advantage. The advantage is the world has just suffered the supply chain challenges because of monopolistic China are very, very disruptive. Globally, supply chain challenges have affected growth immensely. So therefore, the world is ready for a reset. And I think this is a great opportunity for India. So therefore, the government of India should use this budget, look at what are the incentives that China gives to attract foreign companies. What is that we can afford? In this context, I'll just make 3 observations. I know we are out of time. The first observation I would like to make is we have Northeast, which is lying virgin and which can be developed. Tax holidays, tax incentives can be given in Northeast. The second, partly mentioned, but I would like to say that given our expertise in developing 2 indigenous vaccines within such a short time, and those are effective. If you look at the mortality rate of COVID in India, it's amongst the lowest in the world. That means our vaccines are effective. We need to create medical hubs so that we can encourage medical tourism across the world coming to India. We could have something like the export processing zones. We can have these medical tourism hubs in different parts of the country, keeping different climatic zones, including Northeast. I think that's very, very important. The third and the last point in our positioning as a global institution, as a global country, replacing or at least providing an alternative to China, I think we have to look at technological things. And when I say technological things, I have in mind telemedicine, teleeducation, and these could play a very important role in our reaching to the third world countries. So not only telemedicine and teleeducation within our country, we should develop these now so that we can reach the other third world countries. Thereby, we'll be able to position ourselves globally. I think the budget needs to look into the role that India can play in the global economy. And why I'm mentioning these 2 things on medical, telemedicine, teleeducation, and global hub for medicine, because the Indian medical system, Ayurveda, has proved to be far more stronger in strengthening the wellness. And the yogic practices that Prime Minister has been trying to tell the world that this is how we can strengthen the wellness. I think these 2 aspects need to be stressed, and the budget needs to make provision for making sure that the world knows what India can offer in the wellness industry. Thank you very much for giving me time again. Thank you.
It's a wonderful way, secondly put across so many beautiful things all over by Dr. Charan Singh Ji, former CMD of Punjab and Sindh Bank. And a lot of new panelists joining us today. We will be closing this show at the sharp 5 o'clock. We have got 40 minutes with us and we are bang on time. We are not short of time. We are not late. Justice Balakrishnan Ji, now let me formally fastly introduce all the guests. Ajit Apte Ji, Brigadier Ajit Apte is the celebrated Bangladesh Liberation Soldier, 71 War. MN Sarma, Secretary General of the General Insurance Council. Charan Singh Ji, former CMD Punjab and Sindh Bank. Dr. Akhilesh Kumar Jain, former CMD of REIL, one of the top Mani Ratnas. Dr. Alexander Thomas, the President of the Association of Healthcare Providers of India. Justice Balakrishnan Ji, Chief Justice of India, former Chief Justice of India. Manimala Ji, she is the Managing Trustee and CEO of the Sankar Eye Foundation. Mr. Murli Ramakrishnan, MD and CEO of the South Indian Bank. Narendra Ji, who is one of the former CMDs of Indian Overseas Bank. Sri Partha Bhattacharya, landmark leaders in the PSU sector, former chairman of the Coal India, along with Dr. MP Narayanan, second oldest surviving non-Nigerian kind of a great leader that we have with us. He is also former CMD of Coal India. We have Mr. Shyam Jaju, my old friend, Vice President of the Bharatiya Janata Party, one of the topmost leaders of the current ruling political party of the country. Shyam ji, namaskar. बहुत आपको अभिवादन है, आपने शो को ज्वाइन किया. Before I bring you on board, Justice Balakrishnan, sir, if you are there back on the chair, Justice Balakrishnan, sir, you were also chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. India has a lot of question marks over the human rights issues, budgetary allocations for human rights issues.
Budgetary allocation as such is not required for a specific require, because it is not proper for me to say. It is for Justice Arun Misra to say what sort of budgetary allocation should be made. He is the head of the NHRC now. So how can I say whether I don't know whether they have got a special program as such in future. So it is all there. But we get the allocation, fair, good allocations are there. for conducting meetings, seminars, discussions, various social activities, visiting various states for human rights activities. All these sufficient funds are allocated by the government of India. For this year, I do not know because I am not aware. So it is only Justice Arvind Misra and his colleagues alone can say what is required.
Thank you, sir. I understand your point. You were very, very right when you said that today, the entire gamut of, kind of focus area should be around human rights issues, but the budgetary part should be looked after by the current team at NHRC. You were former chairman at NHRC. Yes, social security is one issue which is really flaring up now. Social security systems in this country need a lot of boost. And let me quickly bring in Dr. Alexander Thomas. He is the president of the AHPI. Dr. Thomas, your views on the healthcare sector's support required from the budgetary perspective. Dr. Alexander Thomas? Oh, I think he's off. Oh, okay, Mr. Brigadier Ajit Apte. Brigadier Ajit Apte ji, are you there?
Yes.
Make in India, defense inextricably linked. Make in India and defense are inextricably linked. You please take us through. You are a soldier in true regard, sir, and I know you more than anybody else for sure, along with General VK Singh. Brigadier Apte, over to you. Make in India, budget, and India's future.
Okay. In fact, my apologies for joining in delayed. I was on another call. At the outset, I think I'm amidst all the finance experts and finance giants. My impressions will be, firstly, Mr. Charan Singh brought out some very good points. Currently, the nation is going through the pandemic. How long it will take to be fully eradicated? How long will it take for people to stop from working from home or working from anywhere else? What will be its impact on industry, production, medical systems, the helplines, healthcare systems? All these are how to get back economy on a good trajectory, which can sustain itself for minimum the next 5 years. So as far as Atmanirbhar is concerned, what our Honorable Prime Minister has been always emphasizing, and I will say this, that we need to be our weapon systems, our ammunition systems, our upgradation of the complete national security policy. We need to upgrade and upscale the preparedness of the nation to face any eventuality on any front. I would not like to reiterate what the Army Chief has mentioned. I am retired now 16 years. Yes, I fought the 71 war. I was there during the Kargil conflict. So we know what the country actually requires. And if we can reduce our self-reliance or dependency on other countries, especially during the trying times, I think we will be moving in the right direction. So towards that, I will say this much, that whatever our industries are connected with the defense, be they directly or indirectly connected, they play an important role. We need to minimize our imports. We need to upscale whatever indigenous production we can do. So if this current budget, which is going to be formulated and presented on the 1st of February, if it can encompass the requirements of the armed forces and work out a plan on a short-term, medium-term, and a long-term plan for Atmanirbhar, for our capabilities, let me also assure you that it is not feasible to be 100% Atmanirbhar. It can never happen. No country in this nation, except maybe an odd superpower, who doesn't need to rely on some other external help for raw materials. Everyone does require, but if we can minimize it, if we can put our eggs in the basket correctly so that we are not taken off guard, I think we'll be achieving the first step. The second step is the armed forces are also the backup to the nation for the current pandemic. So our medical assistance to the country, the manner in which we can upscale and become collaborative, inclusive is very important. So our budget needs to highlight these aspects so that we can move on a platform which is safe. On that note, I will just finally say, with all these great financial experts, bankers, all, if we can minimize our expenditure, if we can ensure that our operating margins are correct, then I think we'll have enough reserves, cash flow reserves and other reserves to take care of the essentials and not waste or spend money on the non-essentials. I think that itself will make the budget wholesome. And my final words would be that the budget should not only aim for a target of 2022-23, but we should look at budgetizing and estimation for the next 2 to 3 years, which can be adequately incorporated in this budget, and probably that will act as a reserve for the next budget as and when that has to be planned. Thank you.
Let me now quickly bring in, it was wonderful to hear Brigadier Ajit Apte ji. We've been joined by two stalwarts from the industry representing two sectors primarily. One is Mr. Hemant Sarma. Hemant Sarma is the Secretary General of General Insurance Council, and Dr. Alexander Thomas. Dr. Thomas is the President of the AHPI, Association of Healthcare Providers, 8,000 hospitals. Dr. Thomas, quickly your views on the budgetary expectations from the healthcare domain, or the healthcare domain.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you for this opportunity. Very quickly, I think as was mentioned earlier, I will limit myself only purely to health because that is what I'm have some experience in. And with this background of the COVID pandemic, as one of my earlier speakers said, India has the potential to be a global leader. We have shown our leadership, especially in the areas of how we handle the COVID pandemic and especially in the production of 2 vaccines. So keeping that in mind, I think we should, I think the budget should focus, especially using health to become preeminent on the global stage. So very quickly, since I have only 5 minutes, I think the first thing would be that we need to increase the allocation to 2.5, at least 2.5% of the budget. And this should be purely for health. This should not include sanitation and other aspects which were bundled into the budget last time. So purely for health, they should have at least 2.5% of the budget should be allocated. And we should use this to focus on 2 important areas, infrastructure and human resources. All of us know that the pandemic has taught us some lessons, that we were woefully short of health facilities in many areas. So I think we need to focus on this. And this I will divide into 2 buckets. One is that the government needs to increase the infrastructure and the facilities and the staffing of their institutions by at least, so that it reaches at least 50%. At present, 70% of the healthcare is provided by private players. It is not a healthy ratio. So government should ensure that 50% of all the institutions, the beds should be come under the government, and also ensure that there is some budgetary provision to ensure that services in these public institutions are good. So we would suggest that some sort of a quality accreditation in each of these institutions. Now coming to the private part, how should the budget impact them? Since at the present time they are the major players, I think it is very important that the government and the private works together, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities. There are no hospitals and no facilities. The government should give some tax rebates and encourage people in the private sector to set up institutions. Now coming to training, again, the pandemic has showed us how woefully inadequate our human resources in health are. I won't go into details, but the major area of concern is the lack of specialists. So I think the government should ensure that all government institutions become training centers. For example, all the government district and taluk hospitals should become training centers for specialists of the national board. So similarly for nurses, I think all of you know that we are in very dire straits as far as nurses is concerned. Most of the present nurses are going abroad, and we are in will be in deep trouble in the next 6 months to a year. So I think on a fast track mode, we should ensure that the ANMs, that is a cadre of nurses at the lower level, should be reintroduced, and allied health personnel should be introduced in all government and private also should be encouraged to start these courses. So this will take care of a major chunk of the problem that we are facing now. The other very important area that we need to focus on is the wellness and preventive centers and the primary health centers, because these are the bricks of the healthcare. And if properly implemented, they will help prevent the non-communicable disease, etc. The Prime Minister had announced the opening of 150,000 wellness centers. This budget should reinforce that and ensure that these centers are active and functional over the next 6 months to 1 year. This will add greatly to the quality of health in our nation. Now, the third point, which I had mentioned earlier, I'll bring it up as a separate point. Since this private healthcare provides so much of the healthcare, and the government is dependent on private healthcare for services and the quality of many of its schemes, it is important that public-private partnership is strengthened. One way is that at the present time, the reimbursements that the government gives to the private sector is way below even the cost. So things like this need to be sorted out. They need to work in an area of trust. They should ensure that hospitals get their dues. For example, I think in the present time, there are more than I think close to 1,000 crores is owed to the private health sector providers for services provided. So this makes them sort of financially unviable. So this is something that has to be addressed in the budget. There are a few other points which I'll quickly go through. One is that, as was mentioned earlier, we need to focus on medical tourism. India has among the best human professionals. We have the best treatment outcomes. We have the best doctors and nurses. So we should ensure that medical tourism is made easy. People from outside coming inside. We should focus on senior citizens. India's senior citizens growing at a very rapid rate. There are a lot of budgetary provisions in the budget, but these need to be implemented. Another area which has come up recently is mental health. COVID has shown that during this COVID pandemic, mental health issues have gone up by almost as much as 50%. And we are not prepared for it. In fact, the number of psychiatrists and psychiatric health professionals are very, very inadequate. So the government needs to focus on this and strengthen the mental health policy. Using technology in healthcare, COVID has fortunately made us aware of it, and we are using quite a bit, but there is huge potential for technology, and technology will increase the quality of care, will make access to all remote parts of the country. Indigenization of medical equipment is another area which the government needs to look at and give some tax breaks to people in India. Similarly, for the pharma industry, we should ensure that we are self-reliant, and for this, the budget should have some provision to encourage entrepreneurs, not only in pharma, in technology, and in research, etc. Health insurance is another area which needs looking at, and we have recommended that health insurance payments be looked at specially, and the tax on that be reduced so that more people will take care of health insurance, because we are going in that way. Two other important areas. Normally, when we come for a budget, we ask for reduction in tax, but we are asking for an increase in tax. And this is in the area of tobacco and related products. I think only people who are working in health know that the ravages and the destruction that tobacco causes. We would recommend to the government that the tax on tobacco and related products be increased substantially as a discouragement for the use of this. And finally, I think a subject which has not been very discussed, which is very important. I think climate change and health have a very, very strong relationship. And in this budget, there has to be measures where the health community is made aware of the changes between health and climate change, and also measures implemented so that the health industry would help rather than harm the environment, and thus help in the climate change. So with these points, I think I've covered most of the points, and thank you for this opportunity, Amit, to speak among such luminaries. Thank you very much.
Dr. Thomas. Since we are actually now getting short of time, otherwise I would have continued this. Now let me quickly bring in, because from health, श्याम जी, भारत सरकार अभी काफी काम कर चुकी है लास्ट 7 सालों में मोदी जी के अंडर में. श्याम जाजू is the vice president of the Bharatiya Janata Party, of the topmost leaders of the current ruling party, political party, and he's been with us now. Shyam ji, what would you like to suggest from the budgetary perspective? और देश को इस बजट के माध्यम से ये सरकार और कितना आगे ले जाने का प्रयास कर सकती है और करेगी, इस पे थोड़ी सी आप रोशनी डालने का प्रयास करें।
आज देश के सर्वाधिक लोकप्रिय नेता देश के नरेंद्र मोदी जी 2014 में आने के बाद उन्होंने पानी, बिजली, रोड, निवास और फूड इन पांचों विषयों पर जिस प्रकार से ट्रेस दिया है, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जिस कार्यकाल से हम गुजरे हैं, कोरोना का पेंडेमिक हो या अभी का ओमिक्रॉन का हो, इसमें हम मात करने में सक्सेस हुए हैं। जल, हर घर में नल से जल देने का संकेत उन्होंने किया था, 24 आवर्स बिजली का संकेत उन्होंने किया था, रोड का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का काम गए 5 साल में जितना हुआ है वो आज तक कभी हुआ नहीं था। आज जिस और बजट की चर्चा जिस प्रकार से हो रही है कि और हमने जिस पैंडेमिक से बाहर निकले हैं, देश का हेल्थ का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, कितने मेडिकल कॉलेजेस हमारे पास है, कितने प्राइमरी हेल्थ सेंटर है, किस प्रकार की व्यवस्था हमारे देश में थी, हम पूरा देश जानता है। इस निमित्त से उस पर जिस प्रकार से कॉन्सेंट्रेट हमने किया, वैक्सीनेशन का ड्राइव चलाया, और आज भी सरकार को हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में काफी बजट में भी प्रावधान होगा और सरकार की दिशा उस दिशा में जा रही है। इसीलिए आज हम वेंटिलेटर एक्सपोर्ट करने वाले, वैक्सीन एक्सपोर्ट करने वाले देशों में हम आज आ गए हैं। देश ने नई शिक्षा नीति लाई है। उस शिक्षा नीति के बारे में राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति, न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी के माध्यम से एक स्किल्ड लेबर तैयार यहाँ पर हो, जिस पर आत्मनिर्भर भारत की हमारी पूरा पाउंड स्टोन उस पर डिपेंडेंट रहे। हम जो कह रहे हैं कि हमारा एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ना चाहिए, इंपोर्ट कम होना चाहिए, उसको स्किल्ड लोगों की आवश्यकता है। यहाँ की पॉपुलेशन, इस देश की कंट्री की आवश्यकता, इस सबको ध्यान में लेते हुए इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जिस गति से बढ़ रहा है, तो स्वाभाविक रूप से वर्ल्ड का इन्वेस्टमेंट हमारे यहाँ अट्रैक्ट हो रहा है। गांवों में लोग वापस इस पैंडेमिक के कारण गए हैं, तो गांवों का भी पुनरुद्धार हो रहा है। लोग गांव में रहना पसंद कर रहे हैं, गांव में भी उनको रोजगार मिलने की व्यवस्था हो रही है। देश में जीएसटी के माध्यम से और इनकम टैक्स के माध्यम से सबसे आज तक का इनकम, सबसे ज्यादा इनकम टैक्स पेयर्स भी है और सरकार का खजाने में भी पैसा आ रहा है। तो रेड टेपिज्म को हटाकर ये सब इंडस्ट्री को प्रमोट करने का काम भी इस बजट के माध्यम से होगा। और मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि देश में रोजगार देना, लोगों को आत्मनिर्भर बनाना, यूथ, और हमारा देश में हेल्थ और एजुकेशन का टूरिज्म बढ़ना, टूरिज्म के लिए इस देश में बहुत बड़े अच्छे अच्छे स्पॉट्स है, पर आज तक उसको कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके, कंसोलिडेट करके उसको डेवलप करने की कोई योजना इस सरकार के माध्यम से नहीं थी। तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि पूरे वर्ल्ड का ध्यान इस देश के टूरिज्म पर, हेल्थ पर, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर और वेलनेस पर, योगा का जिस प्रकार से हमने पूरे वर्ल्ड में रखा है विषय, तो लोग ध्यान में आ रहा है इस देश की योगा की कल्चर, वेदों की कल्चर, स्पिरिचुअलिज्म, इन सब बातें जो हमारे देश के स्ट्रॉन्ग पॉइंट्स है, उसको लेकर निश्चित रूप से इस बजट में प्रावधान होगा। और पूरे वर्ल्ड का ध्यान एक विकसित कंट्री की ओर जो भारत जा रहा है, वर्ल्ड में एक पॉपुलर लीडर के रूप में जो मोदी जी की इमेज उभर कर आ रही है, निश्चित रूप से उसको सपोर्ट करने वाला इस प्रकार का बजट में प्रावधान होगा, ऐसा मुझे लगता है।
श्याम जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आज नेताजी सुभाष चंद्र बोस जी का जन्मदिन भी है। टुडे इज द बर्थडे of the great freedom fighter of the country. We owe our freedom to such leaders. So let us also probably 10 seconds of silence from all of us for the great person, Sri Subhash Chandra Bose ji, if you don't mind. So just 10 seconds. Okay, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's legacy has to be carried forward. Insurance, social security, 2 more aspects we'll touch upon. Then we'll be ending the show very soon. Social security, insurance. Hemant Sharma, Secretary General of General Insurance Council. He's got all the companies under the insurance, general insurance under him. Hemant Sharma ji, 3 to 5 minutes on the insurance vis-a-vis budgetary expectations. Unmute, 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 unmute.
Mr. Sharma, unmute kare.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I hope you can hear me now. I said namaskar to Justice Balakrishna sir and namaskar to all the other luminaries who are participating here. And I would like to touch upon my budget expectations. I would rather limit them to the very few, barest minimum, because the government also needs to balance between the revenue and the expenditure that they always have, huge expenses. So it's not up to me to list out a huge list of expectations. But then there are certain basic minimum, which I think are the part of the good principles of governance and good principles of running an economy. And as a part of that, I would say that we have one or two expectations, which I, as a Secretary General of the General Assurance Council, would like to sound so that, if they are heard at the right places, possibly some attention can be paid to that. One is that the life insurance premiums or the long-term savings like Provident Fund savings in the Provident Fund, these are exempted up to 1,50,000 rupees a year under Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. I'm talking about the direct tax benefits to the income tax payee. So here, with this benefit having been given to the life insurance premium being a long-term savings instrument and a risk management instrument, and also long-term saving instruments of Provident Fund and all, they have really seen a fantastic growth. And then many middle-class people, I'm talking only about the taxpayers, basically, the middle class, who are carrying the burden of this whole country of 135, 140 crores people. Out of them, hardly small percentage of people are paying the income tax. And of them, the middle class, I'm talking about the basic middle class, by getting this benefit of Section 80C, they have responded so positively, and then life insurance has grown tremendously. Everybody participates in the Provident Fund, and without crying, and then they are saving, and then government also, the employers are also contributing, and then at the end of the day, by the time they retire, they have substantial savings which can take care of their retirements. So that way, it's been very helpful. So similar 80C benefit be a kind of a benefit. I'm not saying 80C is meant for long-term savings, whereas the general insurance products like the health insurance, individual personal insurances I'm talking about, not the institutional insurances. So in the personal insurances, people do insure their vehicles, motor vehicle insurances. They have their own residential houses, places, and the contents in the house. These are insured against fire, burglary, theft, earthquake, cyclone, all that perils are covered. And also there is a health insurance cover that people do take. They're all yearly covers. So here, these being short term, they need to be treated under a separate section. So other than 80C. So their government has been kind enough to have allowed Section 80D, under which health insurance premiums were also exempted up to some 25,000 rupees. And then for senior citizens, a slightly enhanced limit has been given. But then with the ever increasing health insurance premiums, they are increasing because the treatment costs are also increasing. And then after all, insurance companies do need to meet their outgoes only by way of collection of the premiums. So premium rates are going up. So it is becoming a burden. Now, what's happening without any tax concession, the middle class, the lower middle class, the real middle class, the higher middle class, these people are not getting encouraged to go in for health insurance and to stand on their own feet. So it is high time that the government considers some increase in the Section 80D from maybe 2550 to maybe some 75 to 1 lakh increase under Section 80D. That is one. And secondly, a new section needs to be created. I don't know what is the section left over now, 80D, 80G, 80H, these are all there. So whatever is that 80 plus some whatever section, under that, we recommend, and we have been requesting any short-term insurances, that is in non-life insurances like fire insurance or the vehicle insurance premiums or the health insurance premium, other than the long-term. I'm talking about the travel insurances and all. So those insurances, personal accident insurance, if anyone takes, in fact, by taking, what are they doing? They are not becoming a burden on the government. They are trying to stand on their own feet by their own risk management. So such people needs to be encouraged, and then some benefit, maybe to start with 25,000, maybe they can give it under the new section 80 plus some section, under which this short-term insurances people taking also must be encouraged to get an exemption from the income tax. So that is one request that we are making, the industry has been making. So now we request government to kindly consider that, and we expect in this budget at least some thought is given to that, so that these people also don't get discouraged and don't become a burden on the government at a later date. They are able to manage themselves within their own risk management by them on their own feet. That is what is one expectation. Now, from the
Sarmaji, 2 more minutes. Sarmaji, 2 more minutes.
Well, okay. From the insurance company's point of view, there is a method of insurance accounting all over the world that is followed. We issue insurance policies every day. All the 365 days we keep issuing. But how to allocate income for the particular financial year? Because we get premium, we collect 1 year premium on day 1, April 1st, on April 2nd, on April 3rd, right up to 31st March, we keep collecting the entire year's premium. But that entire premium doesn't belong to this financial year. So whatever number of days that fall within this financial year, that premium we retain as this year's income, and the premium that goes into that portion that goes into the following financial year is called unearned premium. So this unearned premium, earned premium basis, and then unearned premium is a way by which the government, the insurance companies set aside premium for the next year out of the current year's revenue. So that is how they draw their accounts. So here there has been some anomaly. Earlier, before computerization, they used to treat it as 50% of the premium, other than marine cargo and terrorism premium. 50% is taken as the premium for the current year, and the 50% is taken as the premium for the as unearned premium, and that premium belongs to the next year. That is how it is allocated. These tax authorities have been questioning this method. They're questioning, of course, because this is recognized in the Act, but then what is not recognized is 1/365 method. Because after all, after computerization having come in, so many private companies having come in, they started this 1/365 method, because it is now easy to calculate premium on a daily basis.
Sarmaji, so, key recommendations, sir.
So we are asking for a relook into this. Recently, the regulator also has made a change in the regulation, right from the 50 and 100% method, and also 1/365 method. Both the methods they are out for. We want sections of the Income Tax Act to consider this method also, and to allow insurance companies to allocate premium for the current year and to the next year in this method. So this is another thing. And now coming to indirect taxes, so one only recommendation that we are making, that health insurance premium, which is so essential these days. The government expects people to be on their own feet, have their own cover. So they, and also other insurances, government wants insurance penetration to increase. But what is happening? They are charging GST, CG, at the rate of 18%. 18% is too very high out of the premium. Whereas no insurance company makes even 5% profit. So many companies are making losses. And when we are not able to earn even 5% per our against our risk-taking chances that we are taking, but how government expects 18% GST, isn't it burdening the people, ordinary people? So we have been requesting, at least in the case of health insurance and the compulsory motor third-party insurances, where it is compulsion, under compulsion people have to take. So in order to encourage them, we want that GST to be brought down to 5%, at least this year, from this year onwards. So these are the key recommendations we are making.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. M.N. Sarma, one of the dear friends of the forum. Since the last 1 year, he's been supporting the 75th year celebration. And he's the Secretary General of the General Insurance Council. We've been joined by Mr. Vimal Baklu, the former CMD of the Telecommunications Consultants India Limited, one of the top Mini Ratna companies of the country. But before I bring him in for 2-3 minutes, Partha Bhattacharya ji, he's been a leader in the PSU sector, having led from Mini Maharatna, as I said earlier. He's got some point to make. 2 minutes, sir, and also throw some light upon the disinvestment issues, because you were leading the topmost disinvestment in those years in 2010-11 when Coal India collected 15,000 crores during your times and tenure as the CMD. Because this year also disinvestment is inextricably linked to target to the country's economic growth and prosperity. Shri Partha Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Amitji. Actually, when I spoke, I didn't speak about expectations specific from the current budget. Just one point I want to leave as an expectation. You see, there is a levy on coal of rupees 400 per ton for every ton of coal that is consumed in this country, be it domestic, be it imported, and that is borne by the consumers, the ultimate consumers, which is largely the power consumers or whatsoever. Now, 400 rupees and 1 billion ton is the current consumption. So that works out to 40,000 crores of rupees. This was initially stated as the Clean Energy Fund. Then it was renamed Clean Environment Fund. And now it has become a GST compensation fund. So this money moves out of the coal sector and goes into a fund called GST compensation, which benefits only for compensating the states which do not sort of mobilize enough GST. Now, I think this money should not be used only for GST compensation. There are a lot of funding requirement in the coal sector, particularly because there is a transition going to happen over the next few years. 13 million people are involved with the coal sector today, and that will have to be brought down over a period of time. So rehabilitating the whole process, creating new jobs, creating a new kind of an economy in the coal-bearing areas is a huge necessity, which will require a lot of funds. So I think the expenditure on account of that just transition, what we call it just transition, that one. And then also mining has to become more and more sustainable, more and more environment friendly, more and more forest friendly. So any activity towards creating afforestation, any activity towards making mining more sustainable, like let us say large scale coal washing, gasification. Gasification is one of the purposes which will actually make coal usage much more benign. And there is a call for gasifying 100 million tons by 2030 given by the Honorable Prime Minister. So all these activities, whatever fund requirement takes place, should be allowed to be carved out of that 40,000 crores, that particular 400 rupees says. And it should not be humble submission to the Bangalore.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Partha Bhattacharya. Vimal Bakluji, former CMD of the TCIL, Mini Ratna company of the Government of India. Sir, quickly, sir, your views on the budget. Join in late, then we'll have to close this in the next 5 minutes.
Well, good evening, namaskar to everybody. Actually, I just want to mention.
Sir, we have Justice Balakrishnan ji with us, former Chief Justice of India. Just namaskar, and because this is...
Namaskar, Balakrishnan Saab. Of course, I can't see him on the screen. Yeah. Anyway, namaskar to Balakrishnan ji also. And I just wanted to mention that India, I mean, particularly this government has been emphasizing on making India the global manufacturing hub. I mean, of course, the intent is good and allocations are also there, but there are some challenges like those people who are actually involved in this domain. For import of certain things, there are a lot of restrictions and a lot of time is taken in that process. I think there should be some sort of easing of import restrictions on such organizations in the government who are involved in enabling this particular sector, because I think if India actually becomes the global manufacturing hub, it will transform the country in a big way. So that's what my expectation is. So this is one part of it. The second, I feel that we also need to invest into our indigenous capabilities like Ayurveda. We have neglected such industry at the case altar of the international health services in a big way. I think we need to pay some attention to that. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Very, very secondly put across. So now, before we close, so anything that Akhilesh Jain ji, would you like to speak fast? Dr. Akhilesh Jain, former CMD REIL.
Yeah, I think I have been categorical and clear. I just want to make one point: one nation, one power tariff across the country for the benefit of 6 crore MSMEs which are there. And my proposal is to announce a tariff something around 5 rupees a unit, which makes the MSME sector completely sustainable. The second point, which I mentioned earlier also, the electric vehicle subsidy currently is being given to the consumer, which is creating a lot of hurdles for them, or may create a lot of hurdles. So that subsidy can be given to manufacturer and they can pass on this benefit to the customers. Another thing is for the banking sector, the banks are not currently financing the electric vehicles, so they should be made, there should be some target to the bank sector as well, because this problem was faced initially in the solar industry. And the moment the bank started financing, things became very good. So the same thing is much needed today for the electric vehicles.
Okay, now closing remarks from Mr. Narendra ji. Before we go to the closing remarks, Narendra ji, former CMD IOB. So fast,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
1 minute, sir. 1 minute.
Yeah. So, नहीं Dr. Akhilesh Jain ji साहब बताए थे that regarding the financing of EV electrical vehicles, I think there is also a demand that should be considered as a priority sector. And if the regulator considered that, because in view of the current need for electrical vehicles, I'm sure that will find favor with the regulator. And one more important is now SMEs are all suffering, and we have given quite a lot of loans to them. But the scheme of equity support for SME has not picked up. And in fact, that 20,000 crores and the fund for 50,000, I think there can be a system by which the corporates are also encouraged to invest in SMEs. And because the other side also, corporates have to pay the money of MSMEs in terms of the payables by within 45 days. So I think if we are able to support corporate investment in MSME, by which of maybe they get some tax benefits, that would be the ideal, as they contribute substantially to GDP as well as our exports. And similarly, of course, the one more area, but as we need credit growth, we also need savings. And in the recent, due to the inflation, most of the saving deposit holders are getting negative interest rate. In the interest of the national growth, it may be necessary that the interest rates have to be brought down irrespective of the inflation. But unless we promote savings, so that way, even though government savings have got a better sum of the rates, but the bank deposit rates are very low. So in that connection, there is a demand that whether tax exemption categorized by the term deposit, as well in the amount wise, as well as in terms of the quantum wise, if they can be increased, particularly for senior citizens, I think that will help. And as Murali has said, that the fintechs are now, Murali ji, that it is already under the regulation of Reserve Bank of India, and the committee appointed by the Reserve Bank has recommended for forming of SRO. The RBI has got a separate division of fintech. So I think the fintechs themselves will form a self-regulatory organization in the line of just like bank, we have IBA, so that they come under a particular international and domestic standards set by themselves, and they will operate ethically, and there will be more transparency. That is also very important in view of the fact more than 600 online such companies are illegal. So that has to be definitely taken care. So overall, in the current scenario, the banking and the financial sector is poised. They are well under the what you call in terms of the provisions, and they are well prepared for funding any of the projects. And I am sure the private sector will take more initiative of new investments coming, which will be along with the infrastructure and the new projects that will be taken by the bank for funding, so that the corporate sector credit growth also will pick up. Other side, the corporate bond market also has been the priority of the what you call regulator as well as the government of India. I am sure the corporate bond will play a very important role, and in that respect, the credit enhancement authority, which the earlier budget has talked, has not come into play. Now, unless there is a credit enhancement authority for greenfield project, such bonds will not have a better rating, and that will not have a major investor. So one is the number of players, particularly long-term institution like Provident Fund, life insurance and general insurance and such long-term pension funds, both domestic and international, should play a very important role in such bond market. High net worth individual also should invest, and parallelly, some of those bonds which are having higher credit risk, that comes under the credit enhancement authority, by which their coverage, or even maybe through the government infrastructure fund, if they are given guarantee, they will find a lot of acceptance. The other side is, of course, takeout financing should be increased, and after the project is executed, the other side, the InvIT and REIT, that is for real estate as well as infrastructure project, that will become more active product in the such bond market, and it is already getting. And under the asset what you call monetization plan, this type of more and more InvIT will be, and REIT will come by the government also, which will find both domestic and institutional investors. Overall, that these are most of the requirement from the financial sector, and parallelly the considered for SME, particularly SME sector, which have been stressed. I think there must be a special provision from the government to promote them in terms of equity support. Thank you.
Thank you, Narendraji. Justice Sahab, former Chief Justice India, Balakrishnan ji, sir, social security issues, we are closing now. Social security issues from a human rights perspective, and also some lights that the tribunals of this country, they need to be strengthened, just like the judicial infrastructure. The Tribunals Act, recently there was a feud between the government about the Tribunals Act, all the bodies, that need a revamp. So would you like to throw some light on that? And the budget should focus on creating more strong judicial system and also the social security system. Sir, please unmute. Sir, please unmute yourself.
I cannot speak on this subject unless I study the details of the contours of the subject. So please excuse me. What is the government's recent directions given regarding tribunals? I have no. I have only general idea. General ideas will not work in when we are speaking on a special subject. So sorry, Mr. Amit.
Social security. Social security,
social security and human rights is an important subject that is required. Social security is a vast subject dealing with the employment opportunity, housing, poverty alleviation, education. All these consists of social security. It is the overall development of human beings in this country. So that is a social security. It is not the budget is certainly focusing on that. So they will have various social welfare activities will be there. That they may allocate fund for that. Certainly the finance minister will be paying attention to such things.
Thank you, Justice Saab. Murli ji, you are an experienced banker. We close with you now. Mr. Murli Ramakrishnan, the MD and CEO of South Indian Bank, also throw some light upon the investor protection issues, because if you can, because this retail investors are going to really suffer. The markets have gone to 50,000 plus, but the retail investors are where they were. I mean, apart from that, closing remarks from you, Mr. Murli Ramakrishnan.
Yeah, I think, let me just check. Yeah. I think we have covered many of the good suggestions spanning across the SMEs, individuals, and the specific industry sectors and specific parts of the financial services like insurance, etc. I think when it's coming to investor protection, particularly the capital market related thing, I think the one thing which obviously always stands away from all this is investor beware. I mean, one has to really, whatever money, hard-earned money which they are using to invest in stocks, they should definitely do their homework. And today, more than ever, data is made available, data is accessible, and India being the country with the maximum penetration in mobility and data being made available at such a cheap cost, I'm sure data is available today for anybody to really make an intelligent decision on where to put money. And I think the rule, which fundamental principle, which always works very well, one, it shouldn't be really greedy. And that's where I think many times people overdo and end up burning their hard-earned money. So, of course, my comment on this would be more from a professional who has been doing trading and who has been looking at stock market, not as a great specialist of this area, but it's more from the fact that this is an area one should understand clearly what they are doing, and they should take their own decisions instead of just going by somebody else's views and somebody else's comments. But at the end of the day, if you lose money, then you can't really anybody to blame other than yourself because you went after their suggestions. That is number one. Number two, when it comes to some more suggestions on the budget side, I think an important point which Mr. Narendra made, I think should definitely be taken into account, which is about the real value of the savings, which many of our senior citizens, once they retire from active life and whatever they earn, and they need to obviously deploy it in the possible avenues for investment. And today, given the fact that interest rates are hovering very low, and of course, though there is an expectation that it's going to firm up in the months and years to come. But currently, today, given the fact that the interest rates regimes is quite, interest rates are very low, we are in an low interest rate regime. I think clearly it's impacting the real income of senior citizens. So, like the way we have FMPs, etc., there could be some indexation which we can probably look at in interest rates for the various fixed instruments available, which would probably help people to protect their savings and protect their hard-earned money. And then one final suggestion would be, again, in terms of this is more to improve the overall ecosystem in the country. This is something which I mentioned earlier too. I think one of the things which I think the banks as well as the entire infrastructure suffer today is the inordinate delay which happens in resolution of any legally drawn NPA cases. Today, there are cases where 5 to 6, 7 years have gone by, but absolutely no change has happened in terms of the position with respect to resolution. IBC definitely gave us a lot of hope, and IBC indeed has resulted in some of the resolutions of some big cases. But then today, even today, as we are talking, there are many cases which have just been dragged into legal processes by people filing affidavits and counter affidavits, and then people dragging cases, etc. Eventually, it's not seeing the end of the light of the day, which is leading to deterioration in the overall value of what probably the country would be able to get out of those assets. So it's neither helping the borrower nor helping the lending institution. And at the end of the day, it's also not helping the country, because any good investor, foreign investor who would want to enter into the country, one of the few things which they look at is how quick is our legal resolution process in the country. How is the law of the land and how quickly resolutions can happen. This is where I think some of the Southeast Asian countries and South Asian countries really score over us, because there it's possible to resolve cases much earlier than what we get to see in India, which also helps anybody to protect their money. When a lender is giving hard-earned money of their deposit holders into as advances to a borrower, and if that case unfortunately goes into a default situation, if you don't realize the money much in advance, the value of the whole thing goes down, and it's not helping anybody. Therefore, a strong, very effective legal resolution is required for a strong financial system. And a strong financial system is needed for a strong investment and lending climate, which is one of the key requirements for country to really move from a developing country to a developed country. If you look at China, somebody gave an example of China. For several years, they've been using manufacturing as a big engine for investment. And if you look at the scale of their manufacturing units, they've developed plants which were world scale. I mean, they didn't look at their market as China. They looked at world as a market. And they really played very big time on the scale, because of which their cost of production has become so less that they're able to compete with anybody else in the world. I think India definitely has to look at manufacturing as one of the key drivers, apart from traditionally playing on our strength, which is basically IT, ITES, and services related outputs. So I would probably end by saying that we have still a long way to go. We have a great opportunity to make this country again regain its position as one of the most developed countries in the world. But we need to make use of every opportunity to really bring in sea changes, which we are actually witnessing over the last few years in the country. I'm sure the pace is probably an eyesore for any other developed country. If we catapult ourselves in this, I'm sure it's not too far away for India to really become a most powerful country in the world. Thank you.
Anyone would like to speak? Anyone would like to speak about the relevance of PLI, because productivity linked incentive schemes is like a mad rush going on by all the sectoral lobbies to push for more and more PLIs allocated to their sector. Just a brief, probably 1 minute by someone interested. PLI.
So Amit ji, PLI scheme is for 13 sectors amounting to 1,95,000 crores of on production linked subsidies. In a way, as you grow the more and more production, you get the whatever allocated for the particular sector, that in a proportionate they are getting. So in a way, to encourage Indian multinationals as well as foreign multinationals to take up in a big scale on the manufacturing, and India becoming a manufacturing hub. In that respect, this PLI scheme for specific sectors, I think that has been a really welcome sign. But at the same time, we have to be global. We cannot be only local. So in the Atmanirbhar, as we promote more and more industries domestically, we have also to increase our imports, which are again lead to exports. So currently also India, the exports are going towards around $400 billion of manufacturing itself, another maybe $200 billion of exports. So the overall merchandise export this year, it will go very well, and the growth is taking place. So India, one is investment-led growth, another is export-led growth. And if our exports have to increase, then we have to also encourage some of the raw material imports to India. That is also important. Other than gold and gold particularly, where we have to definitely cut it. So overall, your point is PLI scheme is very much needed, and we have to also promote SME in and around the PLI, means such a zone, so that SME cluster also get developed as that of the Maruti Udyog experience.
Yeah, Maruti Udyog experience definitely post the emergency era is something we can look forward to. And I am let me also quickly touch upon, technology was the reason we were, on the top of the ladder in the 1700th century or the 17th century or the 18th century, as we say. But technology probably is the reason which people are using to probably put India down. We need to have more stronger rules, regulations, so that, we can use technology to our advantage and again reach where we should be, not only economically, but also from the SDI perspective, but also from the per capita perspective, but also from the ease of doing business perspective. Closing remarks, Ajit Apte ji, Brigadier, like as always, our forum, he has been the opening batsman. He closes the innings, because we believe that once you open, you close the innings, and that is the mark of a true winner. Brigadier Ajit Apte.
Amit, I think Madam wants to say something. Let her please go ahead. Yes, Madam, please.
Thank
Ladies
you, sir.
first. Yeah, women empowerment. Ladies first.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in this forum, I just want to ask you, because of this, what is happening, the debtors turnover is extending, the debt period is increasing. And on the other hand, banks are saying that within 2 months, if you don't pay, they're making it NPA. So that is where probably majority of these SMEs and companies are suffering. The age of debtors is increasing.
Madam, yeah, that is where the government wants everybody, corporates and all of them to pay as per the act within 45 days. One. Second,
that's not happening.
if that is not done, they are supposed to, they will be pay, no, they have to have a compounding interest will be charged as penalty. They have to disclose that also in their balance sheet, which will be again a negative aspect. The third aspect, madam, the factoring has been, last time amendment has been brought, and with the factoring, all the corporates and all the PSUs are to be registered with the TREDS, and in the TREDS, all the MSMEs above now, today it is up to 500 crores and above, which I think government should bring down to 250 crores in line with the MSME definition, and their bill could be uploaded, which can be accepted by the corporate or that buyer, and the moment they are accepted, that will be discounted by the banks, and that interest rate will be much, much lower than what otherwise the banks are charging for working capital. So already around 45,000 crores have been dealt with these 3 TREDS exchanges. So with the factoring and new NBFCs also will be allowed to do factoring. So the domestic factoring as well as this TREDS, madam, that will enable. And one more thing is, you must, if at all there are delay in payment by any corporate or anybody, including government, you should bring down to the notice of the government, because government department also has to go very aggressively against those who are not paying in time.
Thank you, sir. In our case, it is 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, things are happening, but they'll take
Yes.
time. They need time. They need such forums to really put things across in front of the policymakers with proper enforcement, positioning, and the right people at the right time at the right place. That is to be reached out. That is what we are doing, and we are endeavoring. Closing remarks, Brigadier Ajit Apte, shoot the way you shot the Pakistanis in the Bangladesh war, and let's close this.
I think, Amit, all our esteemed distinguished panelists have given some very wonderful points, especially Mr. Murali, Mr. Narendra, Justice Balakrishnan, social security, all points have been encompassed. I think the next budget would hopefully focus on manufacturing, information technology, and I think we must put in a lot of emphasis on cyber security, because that is a bane at all international levels, especially when we are competing like very great countries, which I would not like to name here, but everyone knows that they are experts in derailing the cyber systems. So we need to focus on that. We need to ensure that Atmanirbhar is on the right track and has a proper mix of what can be imported and what can be exported, so that we can draw a mixed balance and have indigenous production in the essential sectors. One point which I would like to highlight, I don't know, we have great experts here, but in the micro SME sector, I think if I am not wrong, in 2021, 500 crores, which doubled up in the next financial budget to nearly 15,000. I do feel that something should focus in the 22 budget, where we take care of the micro SMEs, because Mr. Narendra ji has mentioned even the PLI system which came in. I do feel that this is an important sector which we should not ignore right now, because they, I think, provide nearly up to 25 lakhs of expenditure, which can support the other SMEs. So the micro SMEs is something which will be a booster. And if these segments are tracked and properly done, that is one important point. And also, one of our esteemed speakers brought out, what is the climate for foreign direct investments into our country? They always look at what is the capability of the ease of doing business in India? Can that climate change? If it can in the next budget, and if we can give that kind of assurance to the foreign investors to engage into opening new projects, whether they are greenfield projects or whatever it be, do they have that comfort level to put boots on ground in India? These are my points. And I don't know whether Narendra ji would like to mention something. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Apte.
Sir, that is, yeah.
Yeah, this was a
Sir,
wonderful.
yeah, no, उनका एक उत्तर के लिए that as you rightly said, sir, the Reserve Bank of India has what you call brought a scheme. The more and more micro enterprise, if the bank consider funding them, which have not been hitherto funded by them, then that portfolio will be exempt from CRR and SLR. So in a way, there is an attempt by the banking sector and the fintech and all of them, including NBFC, to bring more and more micro enterprise. And as you rightly said, budget में वो 15,000 crore भी sanction किए हैं. So there is one more thing is as many new cluster and the existing cluster development has to take place through SIDBI and private initiative by the government also. Then their product also will have to be pooled together for marketing both domestically and internationally. Otherwise, as a particular small micro, he is not in a must capability to support himself or the industry, because most of them are proprietorship due to this COVID and other things. Their entire working capital has dried up. So that's where the bank also are now under the 100% that credit guarantee. On the emergency credit guarantee, they have given now already 3 lakh crore, another 1.15 lakh crores or 1.50 lakh crores also government has considered, and the government is have been requested that that scheme with the enhanced allocation will have to be continued in the current budget, and there no restriction as to earlier it was for clients having enjoyed 25 crores and above. Now they said that that type of limit should not be there, so that even a smaller unit could be covered. Your point is a very much well taken.
Okay, thank you all, gentlemen. Let us close this on this show today. It was a fantastic swashbuckling kind of gathering today with 15 plus speakers from all various facets of the economical paradigm that have graced this show and occasion today. Justice Balakrishnan led the show. He was with me a few days back, luckily talking on the lotteries part. We have focused a lot on the MSMEs and SMEs as a very important engine of growth for this country, sustainability, growth, etc. I think the suggestion that I have from my side on a jovial and a very, very, lighter note is, let us get into the lotteries mode. Justice Balakrishnan would endorse the view. That's the only way we can create the capitalists. Let us start pooling resources. Let the banks come in as intermediaries, create MSME capitalists. That's the only way out for these guys, according to me. Otherwise, it is just for the rich or for the poor. The middle class has a lot of hard work to do. Thank you so much. Jai Hind on Netaji's birthday. Look forward to meet you all again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.